The floor is all y'all's.
All right,
So,
perfect. Well, let's not waste any time. Let's get into this. We have our final three of Richard, Shelley, and Scott. Let's start getting into it. Shall we just as a whole, how do we feel about this final three? Is it going to be competitive? Is it basically decided? Are people happy, upset about it? Where are we just as a whole with the group?
I think it might be a little competitive. I don't know. I feel like people in the jury, it seems to me to give the vibe that people are bitter at different people. Like, like everyone has a reason to not vote for a particular person in the final three, but it's not like we all agree on who that is.
Yeah.
Agreed.
That was kind of the census with us Final Four. It's like, in all honesty, I was trying to push it to be like Richard gets in, he's gonna win, but like at the same time it's like there was a reason for all of us to get and not get votes.
I don't know if Richard is gonna win. I don't know if he will win.
I mean, Richard's biggest mistake was getting me in the jury. So,
I
because
think I think Richard just I feel like I tend to how I vote as a juror is I tend to vote very like if I'm going to be bitter towards you, it's because to me you did something really unnecessary. You lied to me in an unnecessary kind of way that I felt like wasn't needed and so it's like, well, I was already tricked and I was already screwed from the beginning, so why would you continue to lie in that
right.
manner? But I just don't really feel that Richard treated me right. They don't treat me right. He don't treat me right.
I mean, I definitely also kind of got that vibe every time I talked to Richard, where I got that little bit of the thing. You know what I mean? So it's
Hmm.
like where
He's
I
just
could
kind of
tell he was like,
slimy. Just kind of
yeah, like
slimy.
he was willing to work with me, but ultimately, became to him in the finale, I'm getting cut, which, I made the cardinal mistake of telling him I could not put Shelly's name down. So
But he loves
should
to
have
vote
probably
on Alex, so it doesn't matter.
yeah. Which that to me was also kind of a neat thing. Like
There we go.
he probably was going to get cut over Alex at some point, but at the same time, it's like because I'm not sure what all you were able to see or hear or with the what tribal councils y'all watched, but he had an Emerald Idol in his pocket since pre-merge.
I
Makes
don't know what
sense
that
from what he
does.
told me.
I don't know what that does. What does that do?
It was a super idol.
Yeah,
Oh,
Yeah.
that's sick.
Yuck
and
is all I gotta say.
so, but also as somebody who was working very heavily with him, not at a single point did he, other than the Alex vote, did he make a plan? Did he get the people for it? Did he do anything? Everything like that was me and Shelly. Me and
That's
Shelly
how
were
it that's how it was when I was working with him in pre-merge. That's what
like,
I felt.
Not
and
not to
I'm
cut
gonna
not
be
to cut this
I
conversation off, but definitely going to get into individual players. Just want to get the vibe of the group and then start going towards it. Definitely want to get back to that because I think we're getting towards a good conversation, but just want to get this opening started. And also, Jared talked a little bit. Jeremy, I haven't heard much from you. Do either of you have any thoughts about this so far?
I mean, most of my so I'm of two minds. Either I'm voting for Scott because I had the best relationship with Scott, or I'm of the mind that I need certain information. Like, for instance, from the jury perspective, anyway, Shelley had no reason to vote for drafts there. Like, it's a game losing move, in my opinion. So, and if there is enough information on the board to show that she should have known better, then she's kind of just out for me, and there's no scenario I'm voting for her at that point. Um, and then the other thing, I mean, and I don't want to make it all about me. Like the day of my elimination, like I guess in drafts, you're going to be the only person that has any information here. So I guess everything I'm asking is to draft. So And that is so I probably like yes, I knew I was getting votes, but I was probably more annoyed at you, Shelley, and Richard than I was at even the people voting against me, just because I knew voting for Nathan was a trap, had been saying it all day, even called the very person that was going to flip and vote me out. Um, and I guess like how aware were not necessarily you, but Shelley and Richard from your perspective of the fact that I was probably I was in very big danger. Like we had three options potentially there, like Grace, Chrisanne, and Nathan, and I thought Nathan is the most dangerous of these three options to vote for right now. Um, I guess how much were Richard and Shelley willing to let me go? And ironically, I want them to be more willing to let me go, not less, because if they genuinely weren't trying to risk me at that point, then I just think it's kind of a bad move. It's kind of how I look at it. But I guess that's all on you, drafts, to tell me what you know, because I don't think anybody else is gonna be able to tell me that.
I mean, in that respect, as far as I have been informed, um, we all knew there was that possibility, and everybody was more or less okay because at the end of the day, it wasn't them. Like, I think
Uh,
I was the only other one that was a little bit more trepidatious because, like, me and you were the ones getting the votes so
mhm.
every time before then. So I'm just like,
And
Oh, they threw you under. They both threw you under the bus where it said you were the person not budging.
and I and sorry, just to say like how much of a bad move it was for them. I just feel like for me it was just so obviously like like it was obviously a test. Like it was so obviously me being like, well, who are you gonna? Because for me, when we got to merge and Rich and Shelly was immediately like, oh, let's bring Richard in, blah 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 blah, and I was like, oh. So Richard from the other tribe, who you only known for like a round, and but me, you know, who it just really felt so obviously that Richard was like trying to take such like a really good position up, and I was just like, okay, then let's see who they're gonna vote for. I wanted to vote for Richard that round. I was like, or it would have been like for me it was like, okay, I either gonna be able to do a big play and vote Richard, which wasn't possible, or they're gonna vote for Grace and it'll be fine. I was willing to let go of Grace, but then they were like, "Oh, it's Nathan." I was like, "Oh, it's Nathan." So like the only other person that I could potentially work with, so I'm not trapped with working with all of you for the rest of the game. So I was like, okay. So I knew that couldn't happen. Like that couldn't happen. Like it was so obvious.
All right. Well, if we have nothing else to say as a whole, I felt like y'all have a lot to say about each of these people individually. I feel like there's a lot to get into with
oh,
each of them. Um, so let's just do that. Let's go through each person, talk about their games as a whole, try and dissect as much as we can, and see what we can learn from this as we get to the final tribal. Well, let's start with I think the name that I heard the most. Let's start with Richard. Um, where how do we feel about the way he played the game? Are we positive, negative? I feel like I can guess Rafi's answer to that. Um,
A snake in snake skin.
I mean, I wish I could disagree with Rafi, but yeah,
Like
like
I don't like you get on a call. Literally, he got on a call with me immediately in this game. I was like, I'm your number one. Like we got this, and I was like, oh, you're so obviously a snake. Like I know who you are, but it's so awful because you're just like he's so obviously a snake, and yet no one did anything about it. So it was just like, okay, guess he's there now.
He just always was able to be in a good enough position to not get eliminated, especially pre-merge, because obviously we didn't really have the opportunity to vote him out. But he was never, at least in my perspective, even in the firing range.
I mean, can we say that's good gameplay, or is it just that they were always a bigger target than him? Because like, there's
Always
always
a
a
bigger
bigger
target.
target. Sorry.
Always a bigger target.
Yeah, like, so is that really good team playing if you're staying because there's always a bigger target? Because like I said, as far as what I was aware of, me and Shelly were running our alliance. Like me and Shelly may have put the seeds in to let somebody else say the name first, but me and Shelly were always talking to each other. We came up with the plans, we came up with the names, we were the ones planting seeds. Like,
And Giraffes, to your credit, I will say, like, I would have voted for you to win if you were there. Because
you
I think
know,
I think I liked hearing you say that because if that was going to be your speech at Final Three, you would have convinced me because I genuinely want to know who was actually running things. Because for me, it like I knew what Shelley was doing. I feel like in some not like all of it, but in some small way, like what is she? What like is she like that? She was like the head and she was like going around spreading seeds. Like she felt so obviously doing that, but I felt like you might have been better at being more low key about it. And I think that's overall better. But not to get too far away on about Shelley, but yeah, it felt more like Richard was just like a tag along. He's so obviously a snake. You kind of know what he's gonna do, so it's less of a threat in a way.
and like I said, the one move he has under his belt is the Alex vote. But at the same time, that could have also completely fucked everybody else over because that gave Nathan and Grace the chance to continually win immunities and get the rest of us out. Granted, Richard, of course, we now know was sitting pretty because of the super idol in his pocket. But at the same time, it's like
Were y'all genuinely considering taking Alex to the end though, or no? I guess is my question.
we were for a hot ass second,
Okay.
only
Because if you were,
because,
then I don't really blame him. I think it's a good move at that point.
yeah, because it'd be the easier of our fights. Um, but back to Richard, like I said, Richard didn't like every time me and him were talking, he was basically saying the same thing of I want to do what you want me to do. I want to do what your plan is. Because I was, kind of always in that firing line and he didn't want to detract from me trying to make moves and plans. I'm just like, I understand where he's coming from. And, at the time I didn't look too much deep into it. But now that I'm sitting here, I'm like, that little snake in the grass.
Can I ask you about Live Night Giraffes? Was he in on the plan to vote me out?
No, he was not in. So basically, how live night occurred was we started with a team call, just shooting the shit, waiting for live night to happen. And I can't remember exactly if it was Shelly or Jeremy who said it first, but we were like, kind of come up with ideas of who we thought was going to go. Your name was floated out. We were like, kind of from what we saw, you were one of the ringleaders of that side, and it would be better for you to go over anybody
Yeah,
else
I
involved.
actually remember you saying Jared's name
Oh, it
in
was
that
me?
call. Yeah, I think it was
Oh,
you.
I for some
Um,
reason thought I did, but
No,
um,
it was definitely
yeah.
you, Giraffes.
And
I feel like,
honestly, I mean, that's pretty much all I went off of was, oh, giraffes will probably vote for
and
Jared,
then
so
and
I
then
guess I'm
imagine
gonna do
me, and
that.
then sorry, go ahead, Jeremy. No, and then imagine me on that call, Jared, and then hearing that be like shit, fuck.
Well, so my issue with Live Night is not like I'm not upset with you, Giraffes, Jeremy, or Shelly. I'm upset at Richard
Yeah, he
because
said he threw his vote to me
he
anyway.
threw
I
his
don't know.
vote on someone who I wasn't coming after Richard. So why are you throwing your vote on an ally? It makes no sense. Like I understand that's like I'm seen as like a big threat, but I'm not targeting him whatsoever. So I don't understand like throwing a hinky vote on an ally. For me, that's dumb gameplay.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I didn't tell
and,
him. Like,
and
I would have screamed your name in a room if I ever had fucking got to a room that was any good to
Mhm.
do
say
that in, but
I was
that
I
did
was
not
waiting for
happen.
one that was all of us so I could say your name, but also like to me, one of Richard's dumbest moves, at the very least, to have made it a simpler game for all of us, was not using that super idol on Jeremy. Just because with
Is he
Jeremy
allowed
still
to do
with
that?
us,
He probably is, actually. I don't know.
we would have had an easier ride to the end, and we would have just had to have cannibalized at some point.
Mm-hmm.
But
That is true.
instead he wanted to make a flashy move by
That's
not making a move. And it's
I-
just like,
I'll flat out say I was so annoyed by the end of that round at all three of you, though. I don't think you should have used it. There's a very good chance I would have flipped on you, even if you did
I
that. So
I don't blame him
no.
for not using it because it's the smarter thing to do to protect yourself. And that's he obviously made it to the end, so it's a smarter decision. But I can understand that perspective of it because
Yeah, if
obviously
he
maybe
plays
you
that
would have
on
made it to
me,
final three.
yeah, if he plays that on me, I will not go to the final three. Like I won't win a final three against somebody who plays a super idol against me. Him in particular, I will want to vote out at some point. At that point, I don't know. That's funny though. I didn't even think of that as a thing.
I'm
So,
just. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
so from what I'm gathering, and correct me if this is wrong, from what I'm hearing, Richard overall played the game in his position decently well, but the way that he handled situations is is the major barrier of his game. Is that fair based on
I would say, simply put, I think of the three, he played the best strategic game. I don't think it's super close between the three of them either. If for
Yeah, I
no
would
other
agree.
reason. Hmm?
I would agree.
Yeah, if for no other reason, Shelley's vote for giraffes, I think, kind of knocks her down a peg here.
Yeah, yeah. I can't wait to get to Shelley. I can't
And
wait.
and then as far as socially, I think he's the weakest, but whereas I said there's kind of degrees to their strategy, I think like he's the weakest, but not like I don't think they're as spread out when it comes to social game as they are strategic game. That's kind of where I'm at.
I just distinctly remember right after I voted you out, Jeremy, he came into my DMs, be like, "Oh my God, you're a fucking snake. You're a puppet master. You've been stringing us all along." And I was just like, it's not, no shade, but like, weren't you gonna do that to me? Like, sorry, like, I'm sorry, I'm not just like a bog goat. I'm not gonna just sit here and let y'all take over the entire
I mean,
game.
yeah, you were at the bottom as far as I could tell. Like, you should have been flipping on us no matter what we did. So the fact that it was just because of Nathan, I mean, makes it even worse in my opinion. So
It's so crazy. It's generally so crazy. It's just like it's a little too sloppy for me. I guess I'll bring this up now. But when they voted me out, I literally remember getting on a call 30 minutes before tribal with Richard. And I just asked, I was just like, hey, listen, I don't have anything. I used my idol already. Like, can you just tell me if it's gonna be me? I just want to know. Like, I generally just want to know. I feel, but and I know, and at that point, I thought pretty much had like we patched up our relationship a bit, and I figured we at least had that kind of respect for each other. But no, we didn't. So and I just felt like that was unnecessary to just get on a call and just feed me bullshit and like give me this like false hope in a way. And yeah, it was always gonna be me. I
yeah,
was
I
just
wouldn't
like,
have told you. I just wouldn't have got on call with you.
I know that's if you weren't gonna tell me, you didn't have to get on call with me. You could have ignored the message.
That's the interesting thing I think about Richard and Scott's game is I feel like they really scorned several jury members into not like voting with for them potentially.
I know they're just like
I
so
mean,
bad.
I will say this as far as with Scott goes, because I don't want to say too much because it's Shelley's story and information to give.
Mhm.
But if it wasn't for the fact he won immunity, $10 says Scott would be sitting in my position, not me.
And I
There's no
That's what
doubt
we
in
were
my mind that
thinking.
Yeah,
there's no
which I do think
but
is important. That I mean, I guess I can't ask the jury what questions to ask, but I want both Richard and Shelley to say that on their own tomorrow because I really do feel like Scott was the front runner according to the jury coming into this Final Four anyway.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
and I need them to say, like in their speeches or whatnot, that they were going to vote Scott out. And if they don't, then that kind of makes me a lot less likely to vote for them because I mean, it was the best move on the table, and I don't blame them for taking Scott to four when like Nathan's an even bigger problem and probably
Yeah.
more dangerous to win immunity.
But
So
they voted out Grace.
I think I mean is Grace
that's
ahead
just
of
to
them
get rid
too
of the
though?
number possibility.
I don't know.
They wasted their time. I like obvious like the move to vote out Grace is just so wild in this context because it's just like I mean y'all wasted your time. I mean like whoever wins can take credit for that being beneficial. But whoever loses can say, "Oh, I should have just voted out the other person." Like it's like one of those hindsight moves. It's only a move that's good in hindsight.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those moves where you're betting on Scott not being able to win it for. Because I actually think
Mhm.
Grace is probably slightly better at comps than Scott too. I just Scott happened to win at four. I don't think they did the wrong thing in any of those last three rounds. They just
Hmm.
it hit
The
21.
wrong person
Blackjack
won.
happened. Um,
Well, all right. Should we
Because
move on? Oh, sorry.
yeah, I was just going to try to segue that way into us actually moving on to Scott more, because I can truly say for me at least, again, actually I can actually purely say that Scott didn't make a single goddamn move this entire game.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess we can move on to Scott. We could great transition. This is
Because
the
like I think
part.
we kind of beat that dead horse of Richard, so
Yeah.
we need to let
By
it.
all means, this was a fantastic segue. Let's move right on
This
to
is the
Scott.
this is what they would play that clip on the show for the coming up, and it was like. But I would agree. I'm interested. I can't. I'm my one of my questions is definitely going to be, so Scott, what did you do to benefit solely yourself? Like, what did you do to that like actively did that only benefited you? That's all.
Like the only thing he did and had in his advantage was the steal a vote that he used on Nathan during the Chris Ann vote,
But
which sorry.
I just don't think that benefited himself only. He did that for the advancement of the group. Because for me, the way I saw it was that he had me, and like I honestly was misted by Scott and thought he was with me more than I thought he was. And so honestly, if at that point, like, it's just so wild. I was just like, oh, okay, so you really are committed to this group where you're gonna get voted out at four, presumably, which was allegedly the plan, but we have to see. And I was just gonna be like, okay, like you're really gonna go with this group? Like, are you sure we could do something together? Like it could be like a whole thing. But no, he wanted to stick with the group that we're gonna vote him out.
I don't know. I
He
see it both ways, just because I understand like that y'all wanted to work with him too, but I feel like you probably have more of the jury threats on your side. Yes, he's in more danger to be voted out at four with the group he went with, but he probably is more likely to win the jury vote. Whereas he goes with y'all, maybe y'all will take him, but he's probably not going to win the game at that point. So net positive, probably in my mind.
Yeah,
the thing is
I
that like he burned so many bridges like potentially with Rafi, with Chris Ann very badly, and with Nathan, like because the way pre-merge was working was that like Rafi, Nathan, Scott, and I were all super close. And I was thinking that even after I got it voted out, those three would still stay together. But it seems like Scott kind of went rogue and burned bridges. And so his social game in that aspect was bad because he was telling me during the one world round, like, oh, I love Chris Ann. Like, get along with her great. And I'm like, yes, so do I. But then to the full 180 of now Chris Ann does not like this man. So it's just his
I
management is
mean,
horrible.
I
I
I
can
just sorry. Go ahead, drafts.
I can say to this, probably her little outburst when she left, I know was specifically targeted at Scott, even though I was on a call with her before travel. Um, I know for a fact it was more than likely driven and targeted towards Scott, because Scott did have a way of, you know, keeping you on a call for longer than anybody should stay on a call for a game.
That's
Yeah,
true.
I
You know,
just it's just wild. Like I just feel like yeah, I just feel like he burned those bridges. Like I could tell in my conversations with him towards the end, I was like there just was nothing there. Like we just weren't talking in the same way. Like I could just tell. I was like, I don't think I can work with Scott again, because it wasn't anything to do with me, because I was still like trying to open that bridge. At all points, I was always like, Scott, please, like let's talk. But it always felt like Scott was not open to. He wasn't looking at his options, is what I feel like he didn't. He always was just like, I'm gonna stick with this group and we're gonna do the thing. And I just feel like that's kind of boring. All honesty, it worked out for him, but I just feel like it's kind of boring.
That's just so interesting to hear because I felt like Scott and I had such a good relationship. Like you guys were saying, we were on call a lot, and like even if we like weren't saying anything, it was fine. But like we talked through like a lot of options. Like, okay, what do we want to do? But I do feel like I was the one guiding those decisions. So,
Did he
like,
ever say he was anybody's number one that was on this call, or I
Me,
don't know? Okay,
me,
me. From day one
He
of the game,
told
I don't
me
know.
after
me
like
too.
Yeah,
yeah, he told me that after either the first or second round of us voting together after the swap.
nice.
So
probably
like,
probably the best socially, but the least strategic.
And
oh
Yeah,
so,
yeah,
I
no,
think
his
that's fair.
strategic game was piss poor. Like I said, I don't think he made a single declarative sentence the entire time. I
Yeah, it's just like, did you do anything that you did for yourself? Did you do anything?
So where I'm at with Scott, from what I've heard from you guys, I'm with Richard. I heard some good, some bad. The scale feels very much tipped in the negative with Scott. It
what
feels like there's a
I
lot,
wouldn't
lot
say
more
for me it's
criticizing
not,
here.
but
I
for me
mean,
it's they're all tipped in the middle. For me,
Okay.
that's why it's gonna be frustrating because I again I just think social he's better at making me like him than the other two, which is what social play is in its essence.
yeah,
And
and
he's
like
the best,
also
so he's the
I think
best
the
social player in
longer
this game, probably in my
yeah,
opinion.
and also I think the longer that you're in with Scott, the more that scale's probably tipped because like I can tell you right now, Scott's most likely not getting my vote
it seemed
because
like it's really interesting coming into this. Like we did power rankings like as it was going on. Scott and Nathan were like my top two normally, but I was a little biased with Scott because I felt like we were each other's number ones. But now, and I was thought that he was a good game player, but then hearing this conversation, I'm like, well, he's telling Rafi they're number ones. He's telling Jeremy they're number ones. He's telling Giraffes they're number ones. When I actually had to keep asking, like, we're good, right? Like, we're each other's number ones. And he kept telling me yes. So my it's
It
gonna be
just for
interesting.
me, I just want to like I could probably see myself voting for Scott if he proved to me that he made some strategic moves that only benefited him. That's what I want to see because it's just like I don't know. It's like it felt like he had all the options. Like it felt like he could have
Mhm.
he had everything he needed to make like one big resume making move. And I feel like the one he I guess did make Chris Ann just didn't really feel like it was like good for him. It really like here's the thing, me, Chris Ann, and Nathan did bring in Scott. And I feel like if he votes out Giraffes, who are Richard and Shelly gonna work with? Alex? So they still need Scott. They still need Scott to join them. They're not gonna work with me, Chris Ann, or Grace or Nathan. Like they still need Scott. Scott could have been riding the middle very well and very hard at for the game, but he just didn't do that. He just decided
Left
to
at
go
that
with one
point.
group.
Do so to ask a question towards that, is there anything that Scott could say about that decision that would make it a positive for him? Or is it no matter what he says, it was inherently a bad move?
I mean, for me, I guess like it makes sense because I guess I did play 9 on Nathan, but it wouldn't. I just don't even agree with him targeting us in that round. Anyways, I mean, I honestly, he's gonna have to probably say. He's probably just gonna have to say, "Well, look where I am now. Like it worked out. Like it's just one of those things that sure I can be mad that it happened, but at the end of the day, he's there at final three, so I guess it worked out.
Is that
But
good enough of an answer for you, though? Would that be a good enough of an answer saying, well, I'm here?
I don't think any honestly, I don't think any answer would satisfy me on that front. Like it's not even something I want to like ask a question about because I feel like my opinion of that is set in stone, and that's not what's going to determine my vote if I vote for him.
All right. Um, anything else in particular with Scott?
I will say that kind of seems like him and Richard potentially played very similar games. If they were like in the middle and they had all the tools to make this big move, but neither one of them actually did it. I mean, he could claim that like, oh, he took me out, but I'm not letting anyone claim that move. Um, because I voted
Draft.
myself out. And so, but they both played the middle. They both were fully loaded with their arsenal, but they did nothing. It's like ceasefire the entire time. So it's going to be hard to potentially pick between those. So it'll be interesting to hear what they say.
It's interesting that you say they played similar games, seeing from like the overall grasp I have of both of their games from what you guys said, is one played piss poor socially and the other and very well strategically, and then the other played piss poor strategically but very well socially. But somehow they ended up in a very similar position.
Yeah,
It
like two sides of the coin, two sides of the same coin.
Mhm.
well, if there's nothing else there, let's move on to our last finalist, Shelly. Shelly's been brought up in a fair amount with both of them. I'm interested to see what we have to say when we're focused on her.
Now, if Richard is the best strategically and the worst socially, and Scott is the best socially and the worst strategically, I can set I Giraffes. I know that's your number one, and you're gonna defend her. I know it, but that she's just mid. She's mid all around. Like it's just like to
So
me.
in all honesty, that's more likely just the outsider's perspective. Because, like I said, anybody who was in the circle, me and Shelly were running that. If it wasn't me coming up with the name, it was Shelly. If it wasn't Shelly, it was me. I was mostly the idea man. I was the one coming up with the actual plots for everything. Whereas with Shelly was the one coming up with like, who would be the best person for this moment. During the Chris Ann vote, it was honestly between Chris Ann and Alex of who we were going to put the votes for. She's the one who pushed for Chris Ann to be the one to be the actual vote. During all of the pre-merge stuff, she was the one that was basically saying like, trying to keep me with her because there were a few times where I did think, is this really the best for me right now? Staying with you, Scott, Jeremy, and her, of opposed to me, her, V, and Ryan just banding together, um, and voting out Jeremy. And she was the one who kept me in line during that whole time frame, and that's where my trust and love for her came really hard because she showed me during that time frame I could trust her. I could not do the same thing, say the same thing about Scott or Richard, because they both told me to my face, yeah, we're good, yeah, we're good, this is how we're voting. But then several times they both went off on a different way. Whereas up until this final tribal council, Shelley always was with me. And the only reason why I truly think she decided to vote me was because she realized my and her game are so well connected and tied. Any vote for her could also easily go to me.
Um, I will speak on it just because, and again, things could have changed from the time we had this conversation until the end of the game. But at the very least, there was a conversation that me, Scott, and Shelly had as a group before the split tribal because we didn't know what it was going to be. It could have been like both tribes going that night. And essentially, it was Rafi or drafts. And I will say, I am the only person of the three of us that was vote Rafi out if we fucking lose again. Both Shelly and Scott were willing to vote you out at that point. And it might have been me too. They might have been blowing smoke, but if they're not blowing smoke there, I do think um, Shelley probably was always at least over here a little, and Shelley always wanted to work with Richard too. So I think she probably was just with both of you from my perspective the entire time, and just probably chose the wrong one of you at the end, in my opinion. So
I don't know. For me, Shelly is just like similar to Richard. I just felt like I kind of get her game. Like I understood the kind of player she was as soon as I got on a call with her. She was going to be the person who rules an alliance with an iron fist. She's going to be the head of an alliance and she's going to try and get all her followers to do all her bidding. and I'm not gonna do that. I'm just gonna I'm just gonna bide my time until I can get away. And like for me, I just hate this is by the way, I keep talking negatively about all of them because this is my worst case scenario. I don't know who to vote for. Like I generally am just like I'm generally like I mean, I don't know. You guys kind of all did things that I didn't want you guys to do. So you guys are all here. So I could very well just spin a wheel tomorrow.
That might be Chris Ann.
You. I don't support you.
Shelly's game is just hard for me because obviously, like, I only got to play with her during the one world round and then the very short live night. So my perception of her game is only through what jury members have told me and like what people during like the one world round or what like Chris Ann, Tommy, and Alex were telling me, and that mainly was that she was just a wild card. So I was like, okay, I see what she is and would rather get rid of her sooner rather than later.
I'm gonna ask her why the other two people don't deserve to win. And if she gives a good trashing, maybe I'll vote for her.
Oh, she will. I can tell you right now, she will.
Oh, thank God. I need some entertainment.
Yeah, I enjoyed Shelly. I mean, socially, I felt more connected to her than I did Richard. But I mean, I feel and not feel what I think Rafi was talking about strategically when it comes to her. Like I feel like she was somewhat amenable during the round where Ryan went home, but then she kind of played amenable during the round where I went home. Like it was very clear that it was for shit, and she was not actually listening to what I was
It's
saying,
her
and
way or the
it drove me
highway.
nuts.
It's
It
it
absolutely drove me insane.
No, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Me and Scott have talked about this plenty of times. Like, to me, it was kind of frustrating to play with Shelly because it was her way or the highway. You couldn't talk to her about it, didn't feel like you could talk to her about other options. Dras, I understand that you obviously have a different relationship with her and you guys like figure that out. But for me, from my perspective, Shelly was just like it was her way or the highway, and that really put me off. That really made me be like, "Oh, I am not a part of this alliance. Everything she's telling me is bullshit. She just wants me to be a follower, a goat."
I feel like what Rafi said is basically what I'm gathering about um Shelly's game. Um was wanted to lead based on getting there. Seems like she did, but what wasn't the strongest in either department of if we're going with social and strategic was the middle road. Is that enough? Is being solid in both positions better than being good in one place but piss poor in the other?
I think it's
If I
equal.
Mhm.
1 + 3 = 4. 3 + 1 = 4. 2 + 2 = 4.
that that's
So,
what I meant earlier when I was talking when I said that Shelly is like the middle between Scott and Richard. Like her pros also pretty much equal out her cons. Like I kind of realize now, like, honestly, if they didn't have that steal a vote, do any of them even get this far? If it had just been like, I don't know, it just feels like they kind of were able to like sneak by through some cheeky advantage plays. I don't know.
Um, but well, because Jeremy went home because of his disadvantage. Um,
yeah, I don't know. I think I was in. I don't know. What have I? Would have people gone? Richard's not fucking going to rocks for me. Like I'm going
Oh,
home in that
but
revote
would it have
anyway.
been fun? It would have been fun though.
I don't know. I feel like they're not pulling a rock. Scott's probably not pulling a rock for me
No,
there because Scott's Scott.
I
Uh-huh.
was all day in Scott's ear being like, "Hey, I'm gonna be if I vote for Jeremy, like it's
I
gonna
can see
tie."
Drafts and Shelley pulling a rock right there, probably. But that's probably it.
Oh, hands down, I would have done it happily and easily and been like, "Ooh, shiny rock."
Well,
Well,
That's
if there's
Shelley.
nothing else to say particular on Shelley, if anyone else, little words, if anyone else has anything else they'd like to add. All right, I got a question that just for towards any of them. Is there anything that any of the three of them can say that would instantly get you closer to voting them than the other two? Or does it have to, or is there just nothing that can be said? It's going to be just overall how they show what they did.
Um, like right now, like I said, I probably do view them as equal in some ways, but I guess there's nothing Scott can say that I'm gonna take away because I kind of just see it for what it is. Um, when it comes to Shelley, I'm she's gonna have to be able to explain why she, but like I value endgame correct, like playing correctly at the end a lot. Shelley should have voted Richard out instead of Giraffes. It's gonna be hard for me to vote for her for that reason alone. Um, and and I need both Shelley and Richard to say, yeah, we would have voted Scott out if Scott's not immune there. Otherwise, I'm not voting for them. And I think I had one other thing that was disqualifying, but I don't remember what it was anymore. So
Shelly, I just need to hear about her game because obviously I just didn't get to experience it. So if she really owns her game and can really um, tear apart the other two's game, then I could be voting for her. Scott, I need to hear where his loyalties actually were, especially with me. Um, because hearing that, it makes me question, okay, who was he actually loyal to? Like, I understand that he was a part of like this four-person alliance, but where was he actually loyal? Because there were people who were wanting to work with him, but then he screwed everyone over. Kind of same thing with Richard and his Hinky votes. I just really need them to own their game and explain it well.
I think. Oh, go
Honestly,
ahead, Ruff.
yeah, and honestly, for me, Jeremy, you said something that's like I kind of see it for what it is. Yeah, I kind of see the games for what they are, and I'm not really inclined to vote for any of them because of it. Honestly, it's just gonna be my three questions. I'll tell you this: my three questions to Richard. It's gonna be like, do you do you really think so? Giraffes, this involves you. I was gonna ask him on our call with me before you voted me out. You said Grace and Giraffes are undeserving to win because they just don't talk to people. Giraffes, you were included in that list, and so I just wanted to ask him if that was true. And I'll see what he says. I'm just kind of curious. I don't think I'll be voting for Richard, but I think between Shelley and Scott, Shelley, I would ask, like, I just want to hear her talk badly about the other two's games. I want her to prove to me that she knows that her game's better. Yeah, tell me why your game's better than these. And if she gives a good answer, I'll vote for her. And for Scott, I want him to name something he did selfishly and that only benefited him. And I think if he answers that correctly, I would most definitely vote for him. So I think right now, I'm most likely to vote for Scott if he answers correctly to my question.
I have a comparison for what this final three is. That's going to end up getting all of you to not vote for Scott. But this is what's the season that Gabler won?
Stop!
33.
Not Cassie. Not Cassie and Owen.
Scott is the Gabler. Scott just socially was better with most of us, I think. And I mean, yeah, he might not have done as much, but he was always good in any situation because he was always good with most people at most times. I don't know. Um, and I guess I was going to piggyback off what Jared said, which, I mean, yes, Scott betrayed the people, but it didn't really matter who he betrayed because he always had another number one to go to. Scott's superpower, I think, is just unlimited social battery. Like, I couldn't get on as many calls as he got on. Yes, partially because of work, but even if, like, I had no work to do, I still would never have gotten on that many calls because I would have been absolutely dead. And I do think there's something to that, like allowing somebody with essentially a superpower in the game to get to the end is never a good idea.
That's the other thing. How we have to really think about the fact that Richard was pretty much immune the entire season. So he could really do whatever the fuck he wanted. I mean, obviously he had an extra life, but then it's how would he have recovered from that?
But then he could have just been like, I have this superpower. And then we all would have been like, well, what the fuck do we do? Because we can't vote him out. Like, it just felt, yeah, with him, that's right. Honestly, learning that diminishes him. Because I'm just like, okay, so you were just, so no matter what I did, you would have been fine. It didn't even matter.
So yeah, it's kind of hard to judge his game because he was really sitting pretty the entire time. No one knew it. But he didn't go super crazy with power.
I have no idea what to ask tomorrow
Oh, same.
anymore.
It's
I
struggling.
don't like asking questions. I like people saying the right thing without me having to say it, if that makes sense.
You should ask them, the first person to crack an egg on their head gets my vote.
Read my mind. Tell me what I want to hear. And that's all I'll say the entire time, and then let them blab on and then leave.
I mean, why not?
If everyone on
I
the
encourage this
jury,
behavior.
everyone on the jury was an animal, what animal would they be?
I feel like for me it'd be the obvious answer.
Right.
But I mean, I will say to, answer your question finally, Keaton. Um, I mean, I'm pretty sure right now it's pretty obvious. It's going to take a lot of convincing from either Scott or Richard for me to not vote Shelley as the winner. It's her first game ever. She's made it to the final three with relatively very little blood on her hands. And and she didn't have a single lick of anything the entire time. Me and her were kind of always playing from the bottom. Even from the very first round we had to go to tribal council, she was playing from the bottom because it almost was her over Ketty that very first tribal council. So she had to work her ass off every round to stay. And ultimately, to me, I'm not saying I put equity in effort. And Richard more than likely ain't getting my vote because he didn't have that effort. He had that back pocket filled. And the only thing I can truly say about Scott is, yes, he did have that steal a vote, but up until Scott used it, I was under the impression it was Shelley's because she's the one who told me that she had it. Scott didn't correct it even after Shelley said it to the Alliance chat.
It may well have been Shelley's. I mean, it may as well have been.
Basically. So to me, at this point, it's Shelley's either going to have to say something really wrong or Scott or Richard's going to have to say something really right for me to switch who I'm voting for.
Period.
All right. Is there anything else that, as a whole, anyone wants to say before we wrap this up? Because I feel like this was a pretty productive conversation. Honestly, I think we got a lot from all
I'm more
about all three
confused
of
than
them.
I was when I came here, Keaton. I don't
You're
know what you're talking about.
you're confused. Perfect. No, that's great. I think being confused is a good way to come out of this, in my opinion, because it means a lot was said.
I'm the same way because I came in more leaning Scott, but now I feel like I'm more undecided on who
Yeah,
I want to
that's
vote
right.
for. I want to still be bitter towards Richard, but because of Scott, the information of Scott, I want to be also bitter towards him. But then I have a hard time voting Shelley because I just don't know her. So
It just kind of feels like you kind of want to not reward bad gameplay, and they all have had their moments. Oh God, they have all had their moments of bad gameplay. So it's like, I don't want to vote for them because that rewards this like bad gameplay in my mind that I just don't like. But then I'm like, well, I have to vote for one of them, so I have to look past something.
Who played badly the best? Is that what
Yeah.
is that what you're considering at this point?
Who played badly the best? Honestly, that's kind of is what the Gaber Cassie Owen final three was. It's who played badly the best.
how are we 43? How?
Can I just say I love the fact that I probably would have easily single-handedly won if it wasn't for the fact because like from what I'm
Yeah,
hearing right now,
It
I
would have
was
been
in the
close.
fucking lead
I would have
until
came in. I would have came in, and honestly, having this discussion now, I probably would have came out of it wanting to go for you drafts, honestly, because I would have been like, well, now I'm just like, well, Scott's like,
The
Shelly's like, Richard's like,
it
Guess
I was
what?
gonna let drafts play flip cup against me for my vote if drafts made the finals.
I mean,
If you
Let's see if you would have been here at Final 15 if I hadn't done that crazy shit.
if Giraffes, if you had made Final Tribal and Scott got voted out, you would have been leading to get my vote.
Yeah, probably.
And then
I I think it would
after
have
this
been Shelley or
discussion,
drafts for me, yeah.
Well, not
like
to
I
cut
always,
this. I will gladly let this conversation continue. But I think we're good here. I think
Yes.
if we're good, then I think we can stop the recording.
I'm good.
Ooh, ooh, ooh.